From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The U.S. finally agrees to help Ukrainian pilots learn to fly F-16 jet fighters as Russia captures the town of Bakhmut, or at least what's left of it. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, editorial board member Kate Batchelder-Odell and columnist Kim Strassel. Let's start with a clip from Joe Biden, his press conference at the G7 on Sunday, where he says he is agreeing to take a step that he had refused only months earlier.
My private meeting with President Zelensky after the G7 meeting and with his staff, I told him the United States, together with our allies and partners, is going to begin training Ukrainian pilots in fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16s, to strengthen Ukraine's Air Force as part of a long-term commitment to Ukraine's ability to defend itself. We provided the last year all that they needed to deal with what they were dealing with at the moment. And that's when now we're moving in the direction of putting them in a position to be able to defend themselves in ways beyond what they've had to deal with so far.
Kate, what did you make of this news, particularly the point that the president makes that this is a long-term effort, not for the current battlefield needs, and what difference some F-16s might make?
Well, Kyle, I think it's really unfortunate. We've seen some stories over the weekend basically saying F-16s won't be a game changer, but I would reduce that to a couple of reasons that are choices that we made. So the first one is that you mentioned that we are not making any urgent effort to train their pilots. It's going to be a long process. I would note the war has been going on for 15 months. That's a decent chunk of time where if we had started training F-16 pilots sooner, we could be pretty close to having some. And also moving those jets out of allied stocks will take some time. There's been just an enormous press effort to tamp down expectations that these jets are coming anytime soon. So that just is a self-fulfilling prophecy that will blunt their impact. Though, I would still support it if we could get the Ukrainian Air Force for the long term. But just briefly, Kyle, I'd also add the F-16s could be very useful to Ukraine if we could get them to them quickly. We published an op-ed on this a few months back by a retired Air Force general named David Deptula, who went into a lot of detail about how F-16s, for instance, would be very good at taking out Russian surface-to-air missiles, which is the Russian air defense environment, is why people say that F-16s won't be that useful, but it's just wrong. And I think they do have the potential to be a game changer on the battlefield and help the Ukrainians take back the offensive in a way that some of these other weapons just can't do, because F-16s can cover so much ground, so much firepower, provide close air support. These missions are valuable. So there's still an opportunity to change our posture and decide to get them there quickly.
President Biden is putting a proviso on any jets or training that is provided to the Ukrainians here, though. Let's listen again. This is him speaking at the G7.
I have a flat assurance from Zelensky that they will not use it to go on and move into Russian geographic territory. But wherever Russian troops are within Ukraine and the area, they would be able to do that.
Kim, on the point about the timing here, as recently as February, Biden told ABC that Ukraine, quote, doesn't need F-16s now. I am ruling it out for now. Pentagon experts were telling the press in March that training pilots on the F-16 could take 2 years to get them trained and equipped. And yet it does seem like President Biden has been, I won't say a day late and a dollar short, but definitely a day late. And it seems like there were two phases of this conflict so far. The first was the initial push by Russian forces toward the capital of Kyiv, which stalled and eventually failed. But it has been clear for some time now that this is turning into a longer-term conflict, and it might turn into a so-called frozen conflict. And so to President Biden's point about bolstering Ukraine's defenses in the long term for the Russian offensive that may come this fall or next spring, I mean, that is an effort that has been ongoing for a while now. And some of the reporting, again, suggests that this conversation, this change of thinking within the administration has taken something like 3 months as they have debated this and gone back and forth, and now decided to do the thing that they were ruling out only a couple months ago.
Yeah, and you have to ask what the situation on the ground would look like if the United States had simply been on the ball in the beginning, if this administration had sent what Ukraine said it needed, the country, by the way, that's actually fighting this war, that does know what it needs on the ground, instead of the Biden administration constantly tiptoeing around Russia, because this has just been the story again and again. You just gave the timeline on the jets, but we can go through it on so many other pieces of equipment where initially the administration said no, no, no. And then as this continued on, it finally gave in. Back in March of last year, the president said the United States wouldn't give the Patriot air defense system to Ukraine because it was worried that it might provoke Russia. And then fast forward November of last year, they finally said they were considering sending those Patriot batteries to Ukraine. By December, they had actually agreed to do so and get some over there, at least one. Back in May of last year, the administration ruled out giving Ukraine multiple rocket launch systems. By the end of that month, they had turned around and decided to give them some, but only if Ukraine promised not to use them inside of Russia. And you can look at the tank debate. Remember, 11 months into the war, the Pentagon said there's no need to send tanks to Ukraine. They won't get there in time, and the training will take too long. Now we're sending M1 Abrams tanks. So it's just been the same situation again and again. And this administration likes to brag out of one side of its mouth that it is leading the war effort, et cetera. But when you look at things on the ground, it's actually our allies who are doing more. I mean, as we were talking about the F-16s, there's a lot of reporting out there that the Brits have been way ahead of us in terms of training and offering other bits of equipment to the Ukrainians when they need them. And so we have to wonder again, what would things look like if this administration hadn't sat on its heels? Maybe this would be over, or at least Ukraine would be in a far better situation than it is now, contemplating another spring counteroffensive.
Speaking of the Patriot missile system, there were some news stories in March of 2023 saying that there were 65 Ukrainians who had gone to Oklahoma to train how to run and operate the Patriot missile system. Here's a quote from Brigadier General. "The Ukrainian soldiers are impressive and absolutely a quick study due to their extensive air defensive knowledge and experience in a combat zone. It was easier, though it's never easy, for them to grasp the Patriot system." And then lo and behold, Kate, last week, there's news that the Patriots shot down 18 projectiles, missiles that Russia launched towards the capital of Kiev. And reportedly, that includes 6 Russian hypersonic missiles. I wonder if you could explain just a little bit of what a hypersonic missile is and how big of a deal is it that we now have real world battlefield experience that a Patriot battery is able to take that kind of thing out of the air?
Yeah, Kyle. So these missile attacks that we're seeing on parts of Ukraine are very dense. And basically, the Russians are trying to overwhelm their air defenses with a variety of stuff, whether small drones, cruise missiles, the hypersonics that we're discussing, which are the ones that we're discussing that the Patriot engaged are called Kinzhal missiles. Some would not consider them a hypersonic because they don't have a hypersonic glide vehicle, which is what we are discussing a lot when we talk about hypersonics. But the Kinzhal has a degree of maneuverability in the air that is designed to try to make it difficult to intercept by a theater air defense like the Patriot. So it was designed in mind to try to elude that air defense and failed to do so. So I think it's a big deal that the Patriot engaged it. I'd add just one other quick point on the Patriot engaging those missiles. We talk a lot about support for Ukraine and why we're doing it. This is just a kind of a potent reminder that it's not charity work, because the US military is going to learn a lot about Russia's missile technology and programs by the data that we're getting from the Patriots intercepting these missiles. And so we're going to get some information on what our adversary's technology is capable of that we may not have had before. So there are some US advantages to this that we don't often discuss when we're talking about these donated items, which are not purely altruistic.